Thank you. My name is Reggie. Oh, let me start over. Thank you. My name is Reggie White. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you, Christy, for the introduction. Thank you, Alice, for inviting me out. And thank you, Ali and Teresa, for hosting this great platform. This is probably the third or fourth time, I think fourth time that I've spoken here. And I remember the first time I was so nervous because all I'd done before that was just tell my story. And telling my story is easy. It happened. And I can tell my story. And matter of fact, God takes over and really tells my story, not me. But then getting in here and I'm overthinking it, I'm thinking, and I said, I remember talking to Chris and Ali, and I said, what do I talk about though? About this 11th step, and I said, because what I'm supposed to do is tell my experiences. I'm not supposed to tell what the book, teach the book's experience. I want to do my experience. And they said, what you do is talk about your journey to God. What they told me is that, and I've taken that to heart. And I always remember that, talk about my journey to God, right? And that's what I've done ever since. And in this one, Alice asked me to pick something out. And somehow I just turned to the 12 and 12 and I looked up and I saw that, and it's taken out of context a little. And I'm going to do something that Christy and I talked about earlier today. And we said we hate when people read out of the book, but I'm going to read out of the book for you guys, right? So I'm going to give you the whole context. And where it is on page 102 of the 12 and 12. At the bottom, it says, as the day goes on, we can pause where situations must be met and decisions made, and renew the simple request, thy will, not mine, be done. At these points, our emotional disturbances that happen to be great will more surely keep our balance, provided we remember and repeat to ourselves a particular prayer or phrase that has appealed to us in our reading or meditation. As saying it over and over will often enable us to clear a channel choked up with anger, fear, frustration, or misunderstanding, and permit us to return to the surest help of all, our search for God's will for our own, not our own. In the moment of stress, at these critical moments, we remind ourselves that it is better to comfort than be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love rather than to be loved. And we will be following the intent of step 11. And that, more than anything, points out what I want to do. Because I remember what I'm going to talk about today is my journey up to where I am right now. Because where I started, I remember when I first came into the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I came in on February 7th of 1987. I walked into the lobby of the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center, and I knew absolutely nothing about rehab or Alcoholics Anonymous. All I wanted to do was go somewhere where the people who were chasing me for their money, because I had gotten a whole bunch of credit and a bunch of people wanted their money, and I had lost a job again, and nobody wanted me back at their house, and I had nowhere to turn. And like my friend Clancy used to say, there's no other friendly direction, and the only friendly direction was there, where they said that they couldn't come get me in there. They would tell nobody I was in there. They said they were going to let me sleep. I hadn't slept in 2 weeks, and all that sounded real good to me. So I wanted to be able to regroup. So I went in there and they introduced me to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they handed me that big book. My first sponsor, a guy in there who had me, I remember he had me do an inventory. He had me do an autobiography, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, what he did do was he bought me my first big book, and he directed me to read that entire book. He told me, read that book, get a sponsor, and my life could change. And it certainly did. Now, when I went in there, though, what I had gone in there for, I remember when I first started off, all I was doing was just treading water and trying to repeat what you guys said. And I was just so happy to be away from that stress of living out there the way I had been living. Because the way I had been living, I didn't have any more self-respect. I lost my self-respect. I lost the ability to hold on to jobs. I kept getting them and I kept losing them, right? I didn't have a car because I didn't have license, insurance, and registration, and I couldn't keep up with car note payments. Nobody wanted to see me at their house, so I was homeless. by that point, I had moved in with my mom, and my mom certainly didn't want to see me. I remember I was at some girl's house, some girl who I'm sure, paying in one way or another, because I always paid. And you guys taught me. I stumbled into something wonderful in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. The very first real meeting I went to, I found the kindness of Alcoholics Anonymous and a woman who told me that the coffee and cookies were free, right? Because I didn't even know that. And I wanted it so bad. And the kindness is what struck me the first time that I came to you guys. Not the words from the podium, not anybody talking from the big book. It was somebody who just was kind to me. Then they started getting me at 9604 South Figueroa, which is an Alano club in South Central Los Angeles. They hurry up and get you in the service. And they started getting me in the service immediately. I started mopping floors and I started emptying ashtrays. I started volunteering. So now I'm volunteering. I'm being an assistant secretary at a meeting, or I'm helping clean up. I'm helping set up meetings. I'm making the coffee. I'm doing whatever I can. And life started getting better and better. I had a really good work history because I had a high bottom, but my thoughts weren't different. My thoughts weren't, let me jump into these steps so I can get a God of my understanding. Well, I was talking about God, but that's because you guys are talking about God from the podium. And that's what kind of struck me. Everybody who went up there, from like, there was a guy, there were really square looking people. They're up there talking about God. I wasn't surprised. Then there were like the old timers. Okay, they need to be talking about God. They close to that time. I wasn't surprised. Then it was guys who were really cool, who were going up there and talking. They were cool guys. Matter of fact, a guy who I eventually asked to be my first sponsor, because I thought he was a pimp, right? And he was a guy named Malcolm, and he's in this meeting. He had his shirt buttoned down all the way to his waist. He would have a suit on. He had a perm. He was a really fly, cool guy. And he, and he would talk out the side of his mouth and stuff on the outside and stuff. And then he'd get up to the podium, man, and he start talking about God, just like all the rest, right? And then I'd see the girls, really good looking girl. Everybody's talking about God. So I didn't believe in it, but you can believe I got up there and started talking about God, because I always cared what you thought about it. I always wanted to fit in. So that's what I did, right? And then I got even more blessed and more lucky. They started taking me on panels to prisons, and I started taking panels down on Skid Row after I got out of the rehab I've been in. And then 10 months into it, was it 10 months from February to November, we started Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. My brothers Ralph and Ronald with our good friend Strange. And so now we started actually taking the steps. And we went to a Joe and Charlie workshop in Long Beach a couple of months into it, probably at the beginning, before I had a year, probably, or right around that time. And so now we're taking the steps exactly as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And my life took off. My life got really good, really fast. See, here were my goals, right? Let me explain to you. When I was in that rehab and when I was out of that rehab, my goals were, I wanted first, I want to find out that I could still have sex sober, right? Because I hadn't had sex sober all of my life, right? From the very first time, the very first time I had given a girl a drink and I had taken a drink, I hadn't had sex sober in my entire life, right? All that time. And so that was my first goal. And there was a girl who was kind enough to 13 step me. And so I found out that worked. So now I'm cool in that area, right? So then after that, I needed to get an apartment, right? I had nowhere to go. So now I'm starting to look for the practical things. This is where I was, right? In my first year of sobriety. I want to get going on after that. I want a job. I want a apartment. I want a car. I want to be able to have my own place. I'm looking for things. I'm looking for things that would make me happy. And these are not bad things. I want to be a productive citizen. You guys started teaching, and I became that. You guys started teaching me how to pay my bills on time. See, I've been a guy who had always been getting those. Before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, all that time I was out there, I never paid bills when they were, I'm paying partial payments. Some of you are old enough to know about pink notices on your bills, right? The pink notices were shut-off notices. I lived on pink notices, and I'm calling in, trying to get additional time, and I'm making partial payments, and I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I'm juggling things, and you guys taught me how to be an adult. You guys taught me how to pay my bills on time. See, and my dad had been an alcoholic, and he couldn't make it on with the paycheck. I was so proud to be able to make it home with that paycheck all the time. See, those were my goals early on in AA. It wasn't to get a guy out of my understanding and get this power greater than myself. They could do anything other than fail. And they could keep, all I wanted that to do was to keep that alcohol and those drugs off me, right? I needed that power to do that because I never had any trouble in my life other than that. Without that in my life, I'm fine. I'm cool. I didn't think that actively in my mind, but I'm sure that was in the back of my mind because that's how I was acting. Then I got a girlfriend. She had a son. Of course, we moved in together within the first month, right? And so now I'm a better dad than my dad ever was, and we're living together, and life got good. And I came in here on a high bottom. I had a good work history because I never was getting fired. I would leave jobs right ahead, one step ahead of the posse. So now I'm working. I'm making a lot of money really early in sobriety. Then the richest man in California, he recruited me. I named Eli Bro to bring his company from Atlanta. So now I'm flying back and forth. I got my family here in West Hollywood. I moved them out of South Central. Too rough on my stepson. I got my family in West Hollywood. I got a home in Atlanta. I'm flying back and forth, and I stopped doing all those things in AA. I remember we were taking the steps, right? And the step, we had taken all the steps. See, I really got to go back a little bit. When we took the steps the first time, never too early, I tell you, I took them exactly as outlined in the big book. I'm lying to you because I got to step 6 and 7, and I'm thinking, and he told me, go home and read that and see if and I looked at that and I read it real fast. I'm like, I read step 6 and I did the 7-step prayer, but all that was over probably in 15 minutes. And, and it was no big deal. I basically skipped step 6 and 7. And I would go around talking about I'm working on my defects of character, right? Which, if I'm working on them, I'm really in trouble. I got a bad working on there. So I skipped 6 and 7. But I do 8 and 9. I don't remember much about the amends process, but I'm sure I paid a few people back and did some stuff. And because it was so easy skipping 6 and 7, it was really easy skipping 10 and 11. Well, I did the 10 where if I'm wrong, I promptly admit it, but it was no list or anything. And I thought that prayer meditation stuff was overrated. I'm like, I'm not going to be floating around on a cloud doing all this meditating, reading these books by FOTS and listening to these tapes and stuff. Who cares about meditation? And then once meditation went, then prayer started going because I was ashamed to pray. Why am I telling you all this? Because the first time through in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the biggest things to me were things. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to be, and the things I wanted were not bad things. I wanted to be a productive member of society. I wanted to have a good family. I wanted to have a much better family than my dad ever had. I wanted to be able to pay my bills on time, and I wanted to provide for my family. I liked being Santa Claus at Christmas and bringing big sacks of gifts to everybody, all of my nieces and nephews and my mom and everybody. I love, we had everybody over at Thanksgiving and stuff like that, from AA, AA and CA. Anybody who had nowhere to go, you come to the White House. And I love my life, right? I love my life here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the dances, the picnics, all of this stuff. And what I did is so-called took my principles of AA, and I actually did take the principles I use in Alcoholics Anonymous and use them at the job. And they worked so well that I kept going up and up and up, and I made more and more money, which made me, I was more and more responsible, and I was able to be generous, and I was able to be a good guy. But then, when things got tough, when I had the tragedy in my life, I had nothing left, right? The part about don't let the life that AA gave you get in the way of your AA life. See, I'd stopped going to meetings. I'd stopped taking the steps, but never too early. I'm living in Atlanta and I'm flying back and forth to LA. I don't have time to go to meetings. I'm no longer talking to a sponsor who had first taken me through everything. I'm not talking to him anymore. I don't have any sponsees. And what's more important, I'm not doing steps 10, 11, and 12. And see, where I really learned about that, things have really come around, and I learned so much more when I work with people. Chris talked about how I have a lot of people that I sponsor, and I do, and they teach me so much because I see me in them. And then they finish when I finish step 8 and 9, that's where I'm actually doing some physical work. So now I get done with 8 and 9, and then they come to me and they're saying, well, I'm done with that. What do I do? and we talk about 10 and 11 and 12, and we go through it in the book, and then they keep coming back to me saying, what should I be doing? And what I found out for me, they talk about them as maintenance steps. If I don't maintain, if I don't start cleaning up things and maintaining things at step 10, it gets real messy in my house. And if I'm not talking to God and not, more importantly, not listening to God, because step 11 is not just meditation. Step 11 is prayer and meditation, salt through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Not so through prayer and meditation so that I could lecture people or anything like that. It's to improve my conscious contact with God. And I lost all that, guys, the first time around. I just it totally went by me, and I see it with the people I work with. And so I stress it with the people that I work with now, that this is a really important step, because it's easy to overlook it because I'm not doing anything. And it's sort of like I'm going to the thing I always say. I'm going to the people that go to the public restroom and nobody else is in there, so they go out without washing their hands, because nobody's looking at them. See, I don't want to be that guy. I got to be the guy when nobody's looking. I got to do it, right? And so, and for me, and see, I really, a lot of times, my brother Ralph talks about how sometimes, because it's his, if it's not his experience, it didn't happen to anybody else. And I take that to heart, right? Because I have to realize, just because I was down for 16 years after my baby got killed, after my daughter died and was ripped away from me, and after I went through so much for 16 years trying to get back to you guys, after every single person gave up on me, including me, because I went through that and I got that level of desperation, because I'm the guy that's sitting behind my mom's garage. And see, I'll talk about how I was sitting there with a bottle of Cisco and I gave up on life. What I don't tell you is I sat back there and I had to make a choice. Which sock am I using, my left sock or right sock, to wipe off after I use the bathroom back there? Because I'm the kind of guy, here's the kind of guy you got in here talking to you tonight. I'm the kind of guy who nobody wanted me in their house. They would not even let me in to use a bathroom, and they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. I'm the kind of guy who tore down the trust and faith and hope of every single person that I ran across in my life. No job. I thought I'd never be employable again. I'd never be able to make work. I thought that nobody, my mom, she was the last hope. She was the last one to give up on me, right? And I tore her heart apart. I gave up on me. Gave up. Everybody else had given up on me, And it was like, because I'm the guy. Somebody may have watched that game, football game, last night or night before last. I forget which night. It was the real cold game a couple of nights ago in Kansas City, and it was below zero, like 30 below. And Andy Reid, the coach of the Chiefs, was standing there, and they got that viral picture going with his mustache encrusted with all that ice and stuff like that. My mustache was encrusted, and my beard was encrusted, and it wasn't ice, but it was really cold, and I was that guy, man. I'm that guy. When you guys walked up on me, you walked around. It wasn't just because of how I looked; it was because of how I smelled, right? And I lived with that. And I lived with that for a lot of years. And I barely made it back to you guys. I think that God is the one that got me back to you. And when that girl stole my mother's car out of her driveway, and my baby brother kicked the door open, and he said, "You got to leave my mother's house right now," I was able to call Rico. Rico Cruz said, "I've been waiting for this phone call." And he got me back into this place called acting. And something happened to me. Because he walked up on me in there, and I was walking the grounds with my head down like always. I'm that guy, right? By that time, that was like on day 2, I was in there. First day, I was able to like kind of clean up and make myself look a little more human. But on day 2, I'm still walking with my head down because I'm too ashamed to look any of you in the eye. And Rico walked up on me and he told me to pick my head up. He told me I'm a child of God and I don't have a right to walk with my head down anymore. And before I could stop myself, the words slid out of my mouth. I said, "Would you please take me through the steps?" And something happened to me. I didn't do it. something happened to me, guys. God stepped in and God said, God removed that thing that always got me, that thing that always stopped me from being useful, that thing that always stopped me in my tracks from going to get help. He took away that thing in me where I cared about more about what you thought about me than what I think about you. I don't take any credit for that, but something happened that very day. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't, but all of a sudden, because I've been walking with my head down, thinking all these counselors are going to say, Reggie, you've been in here twice. How are you back again? What's wrong with you? Why can't you get this thing? We didn't expect to see you back, of all people, because I was always most likely to stay sober when I'd be in a rehab, right? And God changed something that day. And thank God to God this my permission to work in my life, man. And I made what I did that day is I started that day at 2 days sober. I started walking around. After I asked Rico to take me through steps, I started going around talking to all the new guys, all the other new guys, and then all the other people, period. I didn't care if they were new or not. And I started telling them what I did. I started telling them funny stories about me, get them to laugh and talk about them. Those were my instincts. And I started talking, but I got everybody to start talking about recovery. And that's what we started doing. And I started looking for the people who were the most vulnerable and the most hurting. And I started looking for the people that nobody would mess with, right? Nobody would talk to them. And I'd go talk to them. And what I started doing, I stopped caring about me and I started caring about you. And it was no doing of me. That was all God. God stepped in and did something in my life. He touched me and started pouring grace on me. And I'm still cursing God. I'm still cussing God out every single day. I still don't even know that God's working in my life, and I'm still cussing God. And I have no belief that God could do anything in my life after He let my daughter be broken. You know, that's the way I see it. But what happened from that is things changed. I did the first 2 steps. I came out of there on step 3, and I walked back in the Never Too Early Big Book workshop, and I said I wasn't going to go back in there with less than a year of sobriety, right? Because I wanted to hold my head up and have some pride and dignity. And I walked back in there at 3 months and God was still pouring grace on me. And I walked back in there and we were on that 3rd step prayer. And I did that 3rd step prayer, holding hands with 250 to 300 people on my knees. We're doing that 3rd step prayer, me to a God that I had no belief anything for me, but I believe that you guys believe, and it was enough to start. And that's where everything started to change. That 3rd step prayer, that's so much a part of every other. Because how do you work the 3rd step prayer? As I tell all the people I work with, by doing steps 4 through 12. You know that I have to take my will. I have, and that's the thing that I always saw. I always at some point got better. Started getting well. I started gaining weight. I started smelling better. I started looking better. I started getting some things, and I started to think that I had some power. So now, instead of always showing up where I said I'd show up before, I start to say, well, that doesn't matter. Maybe I don't have to show up to Never Too Early Big Book workshop. I could go to church maybe, like half the time. Maybe half the time I go to church, half the time I go to, or maybe I just don't have to keep going. Why do I have to keep going to that morning meeting every morning? I have work. I'm tired, and why do I have to keep making those phone calls to these people? Half the time they don't even answer the phone and they don't ever call me back. They only text. And what I did, because God had done something in my life, man, and God had touched me, I didn't worry about what you were doing. I only worried about what I was doing. And by that, I started working those steps exactly as outlined in the Big Book this time, and with a desperation that only a person who's been down for 16 years and saw no way out can work them, right? I did it in a way that it was not my doing. I need to make sure you guys are clear on that. This is the thing of having a God in my life, right? Because I tried every way that I possibly could to get back to you guys, and I couldn't make it, not on my own. And I hated God, so I couldn't see a way back to God, but something happened and God just stepped in and He just touched me, and He did that in my life. And so now, after I did steps 4 and 5 and Rico, after I did that step 4, I started to realize how God wasn't the one who made my little girl sick, and God wasn't the one who decided she would die. And then I realized that I'd start praying back to God, God, please take my life, save my daughter. Well, when did God start working for me instead of me working God. And then I thought about the fact, okay, well, wait a minute, God, you only let me have my daughter for like 4 years, and why would you only let me have her that short period of time and rip her out of my life? Why would you let her be tortured and killed like that? And then I realized that we talk about the psychic change. We talk about having a mental shift, right, in the book. And what that says to me is when I look at the world differently, the world looks back differently at me. And I realized that God, I thought the way I prefer to look at it is this, that God held my baby in his arms and he said, you're going to be tortured for 4 long months and die a horrible death. And what I'm going to do for you is give you to a man that's going to love you every time in your life. He gave her to me. And the way I prefer to look at it is this, not that God only let me have her for 4 years, but that he allowed me to be a father for 4 years, the next 4 years of my life. And when I started to look at the world differently, it just started looking back differently at me. And I immediately started in on that on step 6 and 7. And I knew immediately that I couldn't skip steps anymore. I was too desperate. I had too much behind me that I didn't want to go back to. And I held on to that gift of desperation. By now, I have commitments in every single meeting I'm going to. We were going to all these meetings and I have commitments everywhere. And then I started on 6 and 7. I did those prayers and I turned it over to God. And then I moved on to 8. And I let God handle my defects of character. I no longer worked on my defects of character. And I got to 8 and 9, and I started caring about you guys instead of caring about me. Something changed on me profoundly in step 8. And that's when I started really caring. I started looking at who I was, and there was a lot to look at. Rico had me going to men's cards, and I'm writing them up, and I'm looking at it, and I'm realizing this is who I was. And I did all this to you guys. Right. And I didn't worry about before I would always be thinking, oh, I can get the step 9 promises. Can't wait to get my promises. I didn't give a shit what I got. All I cared about is what I did for you to clean my silence and to clean things up. And what I ended up, and then I did step 9. And that's where I finally got back in touch with God. That's where I saw God when I did step 9. Having had a spiritual awakening as and that's where I had the spiritual awakening in step 9. You know, that's where, when I took that leap of faith, because I was terrified, guys. I was terrified when I did step 9. When I had to go to people and because I had to recite everything that I did. And these were to the people, I didn't care about the money stuff. That didn't scare me. It was to the people that I loved, that went through 16 years. They lost their niece. They lost their granddaughter. All I cared about is I lost my daughter. My son lost his sister. My ex-wife lost her daughter. All I cared about is I lost my daughter. I was totally selfish and self-seeking and dishonest every step of the way, and every bit of that. I didn't think about what happened to anybody other than me. My daughter lost her life. All I cared about was me. All I cared about was me. And I stopped caring about me and I started caring about you guys. And that opened the door to something else. It gave me just that much courage to walk that plank of all those amends I wrote out that I needed to do. And then I took the leap of faith and started doing those amends. I started with my brother Ronald, and I did Ralph, and I did Rod, and I did my mom. And my mom was so hard because I'm sitting there and I'm reading to her, and it was just so tough trying to read that amends to her. And then she came back with, man, it was a spiritual experience. And taking that leap of faith, I started to see God. Started to see God in the results of these amends, because those were so hard. And sometimes we get scared to do them, and those are the best ones to do when I'm scared to do them. And then I remember I was so scared doing it with my ex-wife. I'm trembling when I'm doing them. And she said, this is really hard for you, isn't it? And anybody know my ex-wife, she's a member of this fellowship. She's such an asshole that everybody would know she's the scariest person to do one for, but I did it. And I see God when I do that. And what it propelled me into doing is steps 10 and 11, exactly the way they're supposed to be done. I remember when fortunately, I came to this group. I at least started this group. I'm out of it before I even start talking about, okay, I got 5 minutes left before I even start talking about 11. I came to this group. Ali and Teresa started this meeting on step 11. And I remember I'd done 11, but I wasn't doing it the way I felt. I didn't feel good with it. And I remember Polly Pistol was on here, and she told exactly how she did her step 11. She did her meditation in the morning, then she wrote up her list of things she wanted to do and a gratitude list. And then that night she went over that list. And I said, I can do that. I can do that. And I remember calling Teresa and I said, Teresa, but when I meditate, all these thoughts are running through my head. How do I stop them? She said, don't stop them. She said, grab them. She said, those are the thoughts that God has given to you. Just grab those thoughts. And when you come out of it, that's what you write about, And so I got some practical knowledge as well from that, right? And changed my life, man. It changed my life. I thought that I was going to be up here floating somewhere with step 11. But what I did, I'm a guy who's real simple because I can't afford to be anything other than practical and simple. I can't afford to be in any way but that way. So what I do, I don't read a bunch of books. I don't do FOTS. I don't do these meditation groups, and I don't do tapes. That's fine for anybody that does them. But for a guy like me, and a vision for you, it says, ask him each day in your morning meditation what you can do each day to help the man who's still sick. And that's all I do. What can I do, God, today to help the man who's still sick? And then I meditate. Hopefully I can get 5 or 10 minutes. That's all. But mostly, more importantly, can I do it every day? I can't do it every day, but I do it most days. And the days that I do it are way better than the days that I do. Anyway, and after that, I move on into the 12-step, which, that's having had that spiritual awakening and practice those principles in all my affairs. But the main thing is I learned that what kept me here, what let me get away from Alcoholics Anonymous the first time when I was brand new and everything was so good and everything was so easy for me, was that I forgot about the daily maintenance. I forgot about prayer and meditation. I'd stopped praying too. I didn't do prayer. I didn't do meditation. This time back from the day that Rico walked up on me, I started doing a prayer in that rehab. God, thank you for removing my obsession with drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and Kim. And I did that. I've done that every single day since, right? We never know what our obsessions are, right? And I do that every single day. And then I do a 7-step prayer and a 3rd-step prayer. And then I carry on with my day. Anyway, thank you guys for being patient with me, walking with me through this again. Alice, thank you for inviting me. Ali and Teresa, thank you guys so much for having me. My name's Reggie White. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Oh, okay. Hello, I'm Sin. My name is Cynthia, and I'm an alcoholic. And thank you so much, Reggie, for sharing. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say that everything you said that, tonight, I really related to. And I really want to thank you for your share because I'm going through the same things as like when you came back and starting the program again. So maybe I could say now, I could ask you a question. What keeps you consistent in your prayer and meditation today?
Sam, thank you for the question. What keeps me persistent in the prayer and meditation? I want to say desperation, but I'm not desperate anymore. So I guess it's not I'm glad you asked that question because I'm no longer desperate, but I like the life I lead. I like the fact that I don't have any economic insecurity, none. I'm not a rich man. I don't have a lot of money, but I have absolutely no economic insecurity. I have nobody that's looking for me and that I'm dodging. I don't have to worry about looking at my caller ID on my phone before I answer it. I answer my phone for anybody. I think that strange feeling that I always have is peace, and so much of that is due to prayer and meditation because I like to be a consistent individual. And that keeps me in service that keeps me where if I always do the same thing, I'll always get the same result. I do prayer and meditation. I send those meetings out every day, so I'm of service every day, and I try to help people. I try to be consistent.
Thank you so much, Sin. And Alice, come on up.
Hi, family. I'm Alice. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Reggie, thank you for saying yes. Thank you for always saying yes when I call you. You know, when you sent me your topic from the St. Francis prayer, it's better to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. Could you talk about, because that's really, really far from where we come in, and it's really far from I'm mad at God. It's so far, right? And I think for people who are new, it sounds impossible to get there. And you've talked a little bit about, you know, how well Whoop Dance got you there. But if you could just talk a little bit more about how people can find their way out of the darkness into this beautiful place that you live in.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question because I was a little negligent. I didn't really talk about that deeply at all. I believe that when God touched me when I was enacting that second day of being back sober, that something had changed in me where I no longer cared about me, and it's better to, instead of worrying about who loved me or who liked me, I worried about who I liked. I worried about comforting someone instead of being comforted, right? All of that stuff. But then I take it a little further now because, like, when people, I just talked to a person that I work with today, and she's telling me how she's being accused of all these things. She's done her meds and she's being accused of these things, and stuff happened, you know, and people, you know, she's being verbally assaulted and being accused, like, oh, you still did this and that. And then I go back to my philosophy that I live by and that I always talk to people I work with. Matter what people say about me. Any single person in the world can say whatever they want to say about me. I don't care. I don't care. You have a right to do that. You absolutely have a right to do that. God has done so much in my life. The only thing I have a responsibility to do is worry about how I talk to you, what I do for you, how I treat you. I remember that was the first thing I liked about Ali. Ali always, he showed, that was the example he showed. He showed an example of being courteous, you know, and that was one of the things. That was why I liked Ali in the first place, period. So that stood out. And taking that further, then Don Major started talking about that, right? And I had the opportunity to actually talk to him about it one-on-one before he passed. Thank God I was able to talk to him, and God bless Don. And we talked about being courteous to people. We talked about not only him, who's the other person? Danny Trejo, Danny, this actor who's in the fellowship, and we were at the Olympics. And Danny, we were talking, and Danny was going over taking pictures with people, and he was going over, and I said, Danny, you're not even waiting for them to ask you. You're just going over. Why do you do that? He said, man, Reggie, God has put us in a position, or put me in a position where I'm able to make somebody just in a picture with. He said, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't love that? And all of those to me are examples of comforting rather than looking to be comforted. You know, loving somebody rather than waiting to be loved, you know. And that's what I like so much about that. And to me, like it said there, that's the essence of step 11. It's not about what I get from it, it's what I'm able to give.
Thank you so much, Alice. Just before we move forward with the hands, we have a question in the chat that was in sequence. It's from Susan W. And she asked, what does your nightly review look like? You ran out of time and only discussed your morning review.
Okay, when I do the morning review, and I have to go back to that, and I love the way Polly told me, and I do it that way. What I do in the morning, after I meditate, I write down first the people and places that I need to see that day or that I need to contact. It's a to-do list. It's things that I want to get done that day. Like people I want to talk to, people I need to see. I might need to go do something with my mom, whatever I need to do. And then beneath that, I write a gratitude list in the morning, right? After I do that to-do list. Then at night, I review that list. That's the list I review at night to see how I did, to see if I missed anything, to see how my day went. And I mentally go over my day when I do that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your question, Susan. And Marilyn V, come on up. Let me just ask you to unmute. There you go.
Thank you so much. Hello, family. My name is Marilyn. I'm an alcoholic, and thank you so much, Reggie, for that talk. You know, you really always inspire me, right? I relate to so much because I too went out and stayed out for like 5 years, and so grateful that God brought me back. And I just love your life and this transformation. I wanted to ask you, like doing step 11 and throughout your day, you know, because the 11th step tells us that our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane, right? We'll be able to make, you know, intuitive thoughts or decisions. You know, God gives us that. And can you see, like, throughout your day when you are, you know, making a decision or having something to do, can you see where God is showing up in your life to help you to make better decisions or more God-like decisions? You see what Reggie thinks, but then you hear what God thinks.
In the rear view mirror, because during the day, after I do pray and meditate and I go about my day, I've already turned my will and my life over to God. And what I do is try not to take it back all day. And I can pretty much recognize when I'm getting in Reggie's will and I back out of it. So maybe in the rear view mirror, I might look and say, wow, who said that? You know, but no. I try to look at myself as little as possible. I don't think of myself. I don't look at myself. I don't want to analyze myself. There was been so much of me all through my life, and it got me sitting right here in front of you right now. You know, so I let God have all that.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Benny, come on up, brother. Good to see you.
To see you. Hi, friends. I'm Benny. I'm alcoholic. How y'all? Good to see you, and thank you so much, Reggie, for that talk. And I identified so much with what you had to say right through. And there's one point that I thought it'd be great to share for you to share. Well, that I was thinking about because I went through that. It wasn't emotional sobriety; it was the contrary, and I was being abstinent, and I was sponsoring myself because my sponsor had died, and then I moved away. And I'm thinking, wow, I need a new experience. I need a psychic change within my abstinence, within my sobriety, within AA. And you did share about that. And that's where the part where it says to die with only, it is by forgiving they are forgiven, and that it is by dying that we awaken to eternal life. And just that, could you share and with people that, because the new guy is the hurting guy that you talked about is the guy I'm always at a meeting, and we can't see this on here, but I can see face to face when I see a guy at a meeting hugging the wall like I did, and I can see the pain. And I don't think other than alcoholics can really see that pain in other alcoholics. Can you share on that, please?
Well, you know, it's funny because you said two different things there. And I remembered when I was taking my sponsor and myself, that was a whole different story. Nobody wants to know about that. I was taking myself through the steps and then skipping up to steps 12 and 13. And, you know, anyway, but when I see the new guys hugging the wall and stuff like that, I remember what immediately comes to my mind is that part of the book where it talks about how, and this happened, I think, probably with all of us, but I know for me, I talk to my family about it, even with my brothers who were in this fellowship, right? But I can't talk to my family about what I'm doing because I'm too ashamed and humiliated. I certainly can't talk to my mom about it, can't talk to my ex-wife about it, I can't talk to any of my friends about it. I can't share about this stuff. And I can't talk to my doctors about it when I go to appointments. They say, what's wrong with you? Why are you in this shape? I can't say it's because I've been drinking and doing drugs and stuff like that. No, I can't do that. So, but an alcoholic properly armed with facts about it. Not properly armed with facts about the big, not properly armed with you know, like with knowledge, properly armed with facts about himself can win the confidence of another alcoholic, you know, in a very short period of time. So what I do is I go to that person, whoever I see like that, I go to them and I start talking to them about me, but more so I talk to them about them. I let them talk to me about where they are. Because if they're in a meeting, that means that they've come to help. They've come to help already. So I start talking to them about what I did to prime the pump a little bit. And then I want to know their story. I always want to, whenever a new person, I always want to know their story after I tell them a little bit of mine. Hopefully they, but yes, armed with facts about myself. I don't go in beating them with the book or God or anything like that. I don't go in with the God thing. I go in with facts about myself because I gotta win their confidence so that they know. Because I might go in there with a suit with a tie on like this. And they looking at me like this lame walking up on me. No, they need to know that I've been where they've been or I felt like it, you know. And so I always go in with facts about myself, about what happened. All right.
Thank you so much, Benny. Doug S., come on up, brother. Let me try it again. Can you see it?
Yeah. Am I muted now?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Doug and I'm an alcoholic, and thank you, Reggie, for your lead. Yeah, thank you. You know, so I Reggie's my sponsor, and I thought it was really bizarre how he had me praying but thanking God for things as if they were already done. And because, you know, these things were like still not on my things to do list, but on my things not to do list, like daily. And but it started a new train of thinking for me. It started me using my imagination and thinking, well, what would I be doing? What would my life look like? What would I be doing if these things were done? And it started to change those behaviors, and it just started a whole nother train of thought for me. You know, what can I do each day for the man who's still sick? You know, and you know, I know that I'm that answer for a lot of people because I was the sick guy calling them up.
You have a question? You have a question?
Oh,
sir?
no, I was just making a comment on what he was shared about a practice that he was doing in the morning and how it's benefited me. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your share, Doug. Appreciate it. Mary C., we've got 4 minutes coming up.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Mary. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I love your share, Reggie. And my question is specifically related to the chronic relapser. I was a chronic relapser. The problem that I had was with my dirty little secrets and the fact that alcohol was always an option for me. I'm going to turn off my video because I think I have problems with my connection. So that's my question. I always thought to myself, you know, this is my hubris thinking, well, gee, if I had those white brothers when I was getting sober and they were in my life, I would never have relapsed because that's really strong sobriety. You know, this is the insanity of my disease, thinking that I'm, you know, but the problem was that it was always there because every time I made it back, the option to drink, well, I made it back that time. And then people would say things like, well, you know, you don't see the ones who don't make it back, but you know what? I want to know what you do, how you approach, how do you bring your higher power to that person? How do you connect on that level? It's a really, really tough. I have some friends in my life that are going out, and just it's constant. How do you do it? That's all I got.
Well, I can assure you that none of the white brothers are God because they'd have sprinkled that dust on me a long time ago, and I'd have been back a lot sooner, right? But maybe they just didn't want to waste the dust on me. Anyway, but what I do is this, because all I do is I share my story. What I can share is my story of what happened to me out there so they can understand that when they look at how long they've been out, and I tell them all the deep, dark things about what I was doing, like I said, using that sock as a piece of toilet tissue and stuff like I tell them about shit in the bed with a girl in there, and I don't know why she never got past that, and all that stuff, right? I tell the things, the absolute worst things in me, because those are the things that they make them understand that if I can come from there, they can come from wherever they are. And then after that, it's my job to help them go through the steps, because my only job is to help them find a power greater than themselves, anything other than fail. I don't get anybody sober. I'm not one person. I never even got me sober. That's all God. So now my job, again, help them find that power. That's it. Just taking them through the steps.
Thank you so much, Mary.